I really seem to like German-made watches. I have a few of them in my collection and I like every single one of them, which is why when I had the opportunity to get our hands on with this Sinn 104, I grabbed onto that chance and said, yes, please, I'd love to get some time with that watch. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and I'm talking about another German watch from Sinn, and I'm talking about another watch that I've been able to borrow because this one is not mine. I want to thank Mark, who has lent me this watch. He's lent me a couple of watches in the past, and it's been fantastic to be able to get hands on with this amazing dive watch because I think it may be one of the best dive watches I've ever experienced. I think it might be one of the best dive watches I've ever experienced, partly because of the looks, partly because of the quality, and partly because I think it's just one of those watches that I think sort of encompasses everything you want from a dive watch. And it is something a little bit special as well. However, they're not particularly cheap. They're not stupidly expensive either, but they're certainly not an affordable watch. Looking online through the sort of second-hand market through to brand new, these watches range between 2,000 Australian dollars up to around about 3,000 Australian dollars. And there's quite a few different variations as well. This one is the black dial. I would have gone for the black dial as well, so I'm glad I've been able to get hands on with this particular variation. But there are a couple of other dial colors, there are strap options, and there's also a bracelet. But I really want to dive into this one, no pun intended, because I want to show off a watch to you guys that I think is something rather special. So let's flip the camera and let's check out this Sinn 104. Now the Sinn 104 has a lot going for it. When you buy these ones new, they get a 2-year warranty from Sinn. It has a SW220 automatic movement inside. It has 200 meters of water resistance. It comes with an anti-magnetic and anti-shock sort of case or internal features. It has sapphire crystal front and back. But the reason to buy the 104 is because it looks so good. And because of the dimensions of this watch, because the watch case itself is 40 millimeters, but the bezel overhangs a tiny bit at 41. The width of the watch is 12 millimeters, lug to lug is 47 millimeters, lug width of 20 millimeters, and on this supplied particular strap, it is 90 grams. And as I mentioned in the intro of this video, there are a number of variations, lots of different strap types as well as a bracelet, and lots of different dial colors. Obviously, this is the black version, and it comes on this rather interesting yet very comfortable sort of canvas strap. Now, I love dive watches and I love pilot watches, which is probably the reason why I like this 104 so much, because it is almost a blend of those two things, or at least that's how I perceive it. But looking close at it, you'll see it has a nice black dial, but then everything is printed onto it, including those hour markers, minute markers, second markers, Sinn automatic and made in Germany. The hands are all white, which really stands out in contrast to that black dial, and of course there's lume amongst it. The lume on this watch is fantastic. As you can see now, it is certainly a standout feature of this particular watch. We have a day and date at the 3 o'clock there in that long sort of rectangle style, color matched the dial, and the lettering and the little surround are white as well. So we have a real black and white theme going on here, which I think works super well. And that dial is covered by a double-domed sapphire crystal, and I'm pretty sure there's a heap of AR coating going on, because even when you sort of move the watch in and out of the light, like I am with my studio lights right now, you can see straight through that crystal. So it's a really nice thing. It's surrounded by this lovely bezel, which is also black. The markers sort of almost look slightly silver, slightly white. They are sort of inset into that, but there's no sort of texture there, so it's really soft to feel all the way around. And it has this really cool bezel. And you look at it from the sides there, it's sort of slightly coin edge, but then it has these sort of solid markers. And you'll see that there is a screw there. What's quite interesting is there's a few screws along that edge of the bezel. Now, I'm actually not 100% sure what those screws are doing, but I'm guessing it's holding it on. If you know what it is, let me know. I obviously haven't researched this watch enough. But what I can say is that bezel action is really, really nice. Has a really nice solid click, nice movement, and absolutely no backplay whatsoever. It also lines up perfectly, which is what we do like seeing, a bit of alignment, especially when we're spending a little bit more money on watches. Now this watch is a couple of years old, so it's been worn and loved, so there are some marks on it. But what you are going to see is that it is entirely polished. The tops of the lugs, sides of the lugs, and the sides of the case are all polished. I don't think I was quite expecting that of this style of watch. The crown there is a screw down crown. It is semi-guarded. It does have the Sinn logo there, the little S. As you can see, when you are unscrewing this, being a screw down crown, pops out nicely. These Sellita movements have a nice feel to them. It is also hand winding, and of course it is also going to have hacking. Now these Sinn 104s come with a whole variation of straps, and this is a rather interesting one, and it's probably not the one I would have picked. It is almost like a canvas on the top with a sort of rear leather. It's not the one I would have picked, but I've actually found it to suit the watch really well and be super comfortable on wrist. The quality is nice, it's very different. It has a Sinn logo there. It's just a very different variation, which is one of the reasons why I actually quite like borrowing watches, because quite often the variations are different to what I would have picked, so I then get some hands-on experience with some different watches and different variations. Now I know a see-through case back is great to be able to see the movement, which it is good to see this customized rotor on this Sellita movement, but I actually like the way that it has been put together. All brushed and a little bit of sort of movement to it. I like how all the sort of information has been put around there. It's just a really nice, well-made, well-put together case back, and seeing that Sellita movement is particularly nice. And I think one of the reasons why I've connected with this watch as much as I have is those dimensions, because it fits my 17 centimeter or around about 6 3/4 inch wrist. And look how it sits down on my wrist as well. It fits beautifully there from the lug to lug, but it sits down onto wrist as well, which is really, really nice and really lifts my experience with this particular watch. So what do I like about it? What don't I like about it? And what would I change? Well, there's a few things I do like about this one. I love the looks. That sort of, for me anyway, it's sort of like a mixture between a dive watch and a pilot watch. Perhaps that's just me, but I see it that way and I like it. The quality is outstanding. Sinn watches, or Sinn watches, however you want to pronounce it, I'm sure I pronounce it incorrectly, do make lovely, well-made watches, and this one is definitely one of those. And the wearability, not just the size, but as you just saw, how it sits down onto my wrist. And the bezel action, that's a lovely bezel action. I do like some bezel actions over others. This one stood out to me. Now I do obviously like this watch a lot, but that doesn't mean I like everything. In fact, there are two things that I really don't like about it, or at least two things that I would definitely change, and that includes the day-date complication as it stands there at the 3 o'clock. I like day dates on watches. I think it's very usable. It's a good complication, but I think it always looks sort of rather odd when they do it like this. It's a big box. There are other ways of applying day dates to watches which I think fit better. This is my least favorite version of that. And being all polished, I think that was a bit of an interesting or weird, or personally for me, wrong choice, because I don't think it suits the watch as well as it should. I would like polish on there, but I would like the mixture of surfaces. It will give it something extra, and because it does feel like a bit of a tool watch, being all polished doesn't then suit that aesthetic. But this watch is not exactly cheap. It's not budget friendly, and I want to talk about that price a little bit more. So let's get back to me to talk prices about this Sinn 104. So between $2,000 and $3,000, depending on used and new and the variation that you're looking at, well, that's not exactly cheap, is it? It's not super high and expensive either, but it's certainly not an affordable watch. But for me, I've realised that this may actually be one of the best dive watches I've ever had hands-on experience with. But I particularly like the look, I like the brand, I like the quality of it, and if I was looking for that sort of one pinnacle dive watch for myself, this is probably going to be the one for me. I've already got enough dive watches in my collection at this point in time, so I can't justify buying another one. But if I was looking for that one dive watch, that one special dive watch, this is probably the one I would definitely pick. The problem with it is that at this price range, there are so many other options available. At this sort of price range in the dive watch market, wow, there is a huge amount out there for you to pick. So you'd really have to want to like this watch. You'd really have to want to own this watch. But I can certainly say that I think it is rather special. And if you are interested in one, well, it is worth at least considering. It's also worth considering watching these two videos next.